1:55, ready to go. So our last thesis today is Kevin Joe. He's got a great topic. It's one that really sort of became a popular thing to discuss back in the pandemic. It's about vaccination, and then over time, it's really sort of what, should it be mandatory? Should vaccinations be mandatory? And he's looking mostly at kids' vaccinations, not COVID itself. But anyway, a good topic. It's worth talking about. Somewhat controversial here. Kevin Joe's words, he says, "I would like to thank God for always being there for me throughout this journey, because without him, I would not be here today. My family and friends who always supported me and made this journey easier. Mr. Wade and Miss May for all their help and support throughout this 1-year journey of completing the thesis. My advisor, Miss Haiti, for all her guidance and support. And to both my panelists, Miss Yasmin and Mr. Rio, for choosing my thesis topic. And all the teachers that I cannot mention one by one who also helped me throughout this thesis." All right, his title is? Everyone gets a little restless at the end of the day. Its title is "A Shot Worth Taking: the Indonesian government's role in mandatory childhood vaccination." Give me just a second to set the timer, and I'll let you know when you can start. All right, you can start when ready.
Beep, beep, beep. The sound of the hospital monitor echoes in the quiet room. A child lies in bed, struggling to breathe, as doctors move quickly around them. Their parents sit nearby, watching, waiting, hoping. This isn't a rare or distant tragedy. It's happening right now with diseases like measles, a disease that could have been prevented with a simple vaccine. Every year, vaccines save millions of lives. In fact, global health data have shown that vaccines have saved over 150 millions of lives in the past 5 years, making them one of the most effective public health interventions in history. Yet, a troubling question remains. If we have the power to prevent deadly diseases, why are children still dying from them? In many parts of the world, including Indonesia, vaccination rates are decreasing. As fewer children receive their immunization, the risk of disease outbreaks increases, putting the entire community in danger. This raises an urgent question. When one child's health can affect the safety of many others, who should be responsible for ensuring that children are vaccinated? This essay will explore whether vaccination should remain as a personal choice or become the government requirement in order to protect public health. In order to know where we stand today, we need to know how we got here. In 1796, Edward Jenner developed the first successful vaccines against smallpox. He observed that people previously infected with cowpox did not contract smallpox, and he uses that discovery to train the immune system to resist a far more dangerous disease. This became the foundation of modern vaccination. As vaccine developed, government began implementing vaccination policies. As Britain made vaccine free in 1840 and required them for children in 1853. With this effort, it contributed to the global eradication of smallpox in 1980. Despite the success, opposition increased immediately. Groups like the Anti-Compulsory Vaccination League argues that government vaccine mandate threatened personal freedom, argument that sound very familiar until today. Hesitancy toward immunization has a long history, and today, those concerned are still causing problems in Indonesia. Since 2014, fewer children have received all 3 doses of pertussis, diphtheria, and tetanus vaccine. By 2018, only about 58% of children aged 12 to 23 months had received complete immunization. A 2020 study found that about 16% of parents in Aceh and West Sumatra were hesitant about vaccine. Children in rural areas were significantly more likely to miss vaccines compared to those in cities. Before we go further, it helps to clarify what we meant. A vaccine is a biological substance that helps the body build protection against disease. It works by training your immune system to recognize and fight a disease without making you seriously sick. They contain a harmless part of the germ that triggers your body to produce antibodies and memory cells. Later, if the real germ enters your body, your immune system remembers it and can respond quickly to protect you. Like a seatbelt, you may not expect an accident, but protection is essential when danger appears. When enough people in the community are vaccinated, herd immunity occurs, meaning a critical percentage of people in an area have immunity through vaccination to a disease that slows down so much it can barely spread. Protecting even those who cannot be vaccinated, like infants or people with serious medical conditions. Why does this matter so much? Because in the end, this is about a question of life and death. Low vaccination rates bring back deadly diseases like measles and polio. When outbreaks happen, they are far more expensive and difficult to manage than simply preventing them with a vaccine. When outbreaks happen, diseases that start in Indonesia do not stay in Indonesia. In our connected world, they can spread globally within days. Economically, outbreaks strain our healthcare system and force parents to miss work to care for sick children. And most importantly, unvaccinated people put those with weak immune system in serious danger. People who cannot protect themselves. This is both a moral issue and a quality of life issue. From a biblical perspective, getting vaccinated is one of the most practical ways to love your neighbor. Think of it like a shared water supply. If one family throws trash near the water source because they want to do things their own way, the dirty water can make the whole community sick, not just them. In the same way, vaccines keep everyone in the country healthy and safe, and it is the government's responsibility to make sure that our protections stay in place. People know this is a problem, but they respond to it differently. Governments around the world have tried various approaches, giving out free vaccines along with public awareness campaigns, making vaccines a requirement before children can go to school, or charging fines for parents who refuse. In Indonesia, most people agree that vaccines are safe and beneficial, but some still see refusing vaccines as a personal right. This concern is real, and the government must handle it carefully. If a mandatory policy is done poorly, it can backfire. People may lose trust in the doctors and the government. Vaccination programs may fail if there are not enough vaccines or healthcare workers. And some parents may even hide their children to avoid compliance. This is why enforcement must combine with education, easy access to vaccines, and strong community trust. This is also reflected in Indonesian National Immunization Strategy 2025 until 2029, created with help from the World Health Organization, which emphasizes improving vaccines access, strengthening public trust, and improving coordination across the country. So, the issue is not whether vaccines work, but who should be responsible for making sure they are used. Therefore, although parents play a vital role in raising their children, the Indonesian government must require childhood mandatory vaccination because low immunization rates threaten public health, place vulnerable young children at serious risk, and create significant economic burden. Making vaccination mandatory will protect the entire community, especially individuals with weakened immune system, by reducing the spread of infectious diseases. Getting vaccinated is like building a shield around a village. When everyone holds the shield together, the whole community stays protected. Health experts consistently note that at least 95% of the population must be vaccinated to prevent highly contagious diseases like measles, where one infected person can infect between 12 to 18 others. The consequences of declining vaccination are not hypothetical. They're already happening in Indonesia. Routine immunization rates dropped from 92% in 2018 to 87.8% in 2023, followed by a dramatic rise in measles cases from over 4,800 in 2022 to more than around 10,000 in 2023. Research found that the majority of infected children had not completed their immunization. And this is not a new pattern. Measles was declared eliminated in the United States in the 2000s due to the high vaccination coverage. But when levels decline, outbreaks return. Indonesia saw exactly the same thing after pandemic-era disruptions. The World Health Organization warns that breaks in vaccination programs can undo years of progress, putting millions at risk. Vaccination is not a one-time success. It is a continuous effort. If we stop now, what happens next? Without mandatory policies, coverage will keep falling, and diseases we once controlled will keep coming back. The group most harmed by low vaccination rates is also the most vulnerable: young children. After 2014, national coverage of the 3-dose DTP vaccine fell below 80%. By 2018, only 57.9% of children aged 12 to 23 months had received complete immunization. By 2023, that figure dropped to just 35.8%, meaning nearly 2 out of 3 young children were unprotected against diseases like measles, polio, and hepatitis B. In some provinces, the coverage was as low as 3 to 10%. The consequences are fatal. As of early 2026, all 6 measles deaths recorded in Indonesia that year involved toddlers under 5 who had received no vaccinations, dying from complications like pneumonia. Indonesia is now among the top 5 countries with the most measles cases in the world, recording around 5,800 cases between September 25 and February 2026. The polio outbreak of 2022 tells a similar story. Polio re-emerged in Indonesia after years of absence, initially affecting an unvaccinated child before spreading further. The virus can cause permanent paralysis, especially in young children. But the outbreak also proved what government action can accomplish. By June 2024, no new polio cases were detected, and the World Health Organization officially declared the outbreak closed in November 2025. When the government takes strong and organized action, even diseases that come back can be stopped. Young children cannot advocate for their own protection. That responsibility falls to the government and to all of us. Beyond lives lost, low vaccination rates carry an enormous financial cost. When the polio outbreak hit, a nationwide emergency immunization campaign vaccinated approximately 8.7 million children, requiring extensive funding and healthcare resources that would not have been needed if regular vaccination had been maintained. When a measles outbreak struck South Papua in 2023, one district government alone spent around 1 billion rupiah on an emergency campaign. In 2022, Indonesia had to give vaccines to around 26 million children across 32 provinces in a large emergency campaign because many children missed their vaccines during the pandemic. Disease outbreaks also hit families directly. Parents must miss work to care for sick children. Families face hospital costs, medicine, and long-term care bills. A study estimated that the total national cost of the dengue illness in Indonesia reached about 682 million US dollar in 2017 alone, including both medical costs and lost productivity. Outbreaks flood hospitals, draining limited healthcare resources away from other essential services. Prevention is simply far cheaper than response. A global study estimated that the vaccination programs in 19 low and middle income countries over 10 years will save around 828 billion US dollar in treatment costs and lost productivity, with benefits roughly 20 times greater than the cost of running the programs. For every $1 spent on vaccines, countries save many times that amount later. But when vaccination is left to individual choice and rates fall, governments are forced to a cycle of expensive emergency responses, costing far more, achieving far less. Some argue that vaccines mandates take away personal freedom, that in a democratic society, people have the right to make their own health decisions, which is true, but personal freedom is not unlimited when a person's choice can harm others. Every society places limits on freedom when others are put at risk. This is one of those cases. When people choose not to vaccinate, they do not just accept risk for themselves. They increase the risk for infants, the elderly, and those with weakened immune system who have no other protection. Think of it this way. We all agree to drive on the same side of the road, not because we want to limit freedom, but because one driver's choice affects everyone's safety. Vaccination works the same way. It only functions if most people participate. The measles vaccines have saved around 59 million lives over 24 years. Long-term studies on the HPV vaccine found that infection rates dropped not only among vaccinated individuals, but also among those who are not vaccinated, because widespread vaccination protects the entire community. One person's decision not to vaccinate puts that communal shield at risk. Others argue that parents, not government, should make medical decisions for their children. And I fully understand that concern because it comes from love. But parental authority has never been absolute when child's life is at risk. No society allows parents to deny their child emergency medical treatment. No society allows parents to keep their child completely uneducated. The United Nations Convention on the Rights of Child, which Indonesia has agreed to follow, is clear. When making decisions about children, the child's well-being should come before the parents' personal preferences. And here's the point that makes this more than just a family issue. When a parent refuses vaccination, they are not only making a decision about their own child, they are making a decision that affects every child that their child comes into contact with, every classmate, every infant next door who is immunocompromised. The moment that personal decision creates public health risk, it is no longer a private matter. The government has not just the right, but the responsibility to step in because love alone does not stop measles, and love alone does not prevent polio. Finally, some say the vaccine program costs governments too much, but the evidence is clear. Preventing diseases with vaccines costs far less than managing outbreaks after they began. For every $1 spent on childhood vaccine, governments save around $10 in direct medical costs and far more in long-term societal costs. Emergency outbreak responses, which Indonesia has faced many times, cost far more money than keeping regular vaccination programs running consistently. This speech has made the case clearly. The Indonesian government must require childhood vaccinations. Mandatory vaccination protects public health by stopping the spread of serious disease. It protects the most vulnerable, especially children under 2 years old who cannot protect themselves. And it prevents the enormous economic burden that comes when outbreaks are allowed to take hold. Behind every vaccination statistic are real children, real families, and real lives that can be kept safe or put in danger. When preventable diseases spread, the effects show up as crowded hospitals, frightened parents, and children whose futures can change forever. Most of these tragedies can be prevented by simply keeping vaccination rates consistently high. Supporting vaccination is not just about science or policy. It is whether we will act before the next outbreaks arrive. Students can help by sharing accurate health information and encouraging their families to vaccinate on time. Parents must make sure their children complete their immunization, and the government must continue to enforce and strengthen the policies that make childhood mandatory. Together, Indonesia can stop future outbreaks, keep children safe, and build a healthier, more secure future. So, the choice is clear. Act now and save life, or wait and face tragedies that we could have prevented. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin Joe. Our panelists are Ms. Yasmin and Mr. Rio. How about we start with Mr. Rio?
Good afternoon, Kevin.
Welcome, sir.
Congratulations on your speech.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, let's just go to some questions regarding your thesis. Okay, actually, thank you for your thesis. Thank you for your speech. Actually, I don't really have a lot of interaction to vaccination, but since you stated Indonesian governments, that's what intrigued me. So our discussion going to be a lot on the public policy and the principle on why government should have this mandatory vaccination. Okay, so first, this is more on the clarification. You stated that there are when you wrote this thesis, two major diseases that you mentioned. First is polio, and secondly is measles. Yeah. Why those particular sickness that spread and the need of urgent vaccination in Indonesia?
So, measles and polio are different from other disease because measles and polio is a special disease which is a disease that can mutate easily and can spread to other people more easily and faster.
What's the if you research, yeah, what's the major cause of this spread, or what's the major cause of these diseases in the first place?
Thank you for the question, Mr. Rio. So you're asking about what's the major cause that the measles can spread. So I think the major cause of diseases like measles and polio spread is because first, the the amount of unvaccinated people, in which by having less people who is unvaccinated, measles and polio can spread easier and faster.
Okay, so go back to your thesis, yeah. Okay, after I read and then I research and I research some of the things that you mentioned in your thesis, that I see that you are actually pushing the government to have this mandatory vaccination. Why? I mean, what is the major problem? That in the end of the day, you ask the government to have this mandatory uh, vaccination, or what is the major problem? Is it the norms, or what's the major problem in the low number of the vaccination in Indonesia?
Thank you for the question, Mr. Yo. So the major problem of having a low vaccination rate is that diseases that once were controlled, like polio and measles, they can come back if uh, many people in the country is unvaccinated. Yeah, and with that, the government have the right and responsibility to make sure that all citizens are safe, and so that this measles and polio can't come back.
Okay. Okay. I'll just I researched some cases where actually there are anti-vaccination people or group of people, and the reason why they don't use this vaccination. Yeah. One of them happens in Central Java. Yeah, one of them is Central Java. This is according to my research. One of the reason that this they didn't take this vaccination is actually first, they believe they have this firm on this principle that they do not want to take this vaccination. Secondly, there are norms or belief, societal belief such as religion, norms, or even their own law or culture stated that this vaccination is not unclean. My question is, this is my question. Do you think that we are, as a government, justified to push our people to trespass their own belief?
Thank you for the question, Mr. Yo. Yes, I agree with you that many people have the concern about vaccines is contradicting with their belief or their religion. But then, as I researched, I found that in a journal that I researched, it says that most of the religion actually do not forbid vaccines and actually support vaccines, because most of the religion actually support vaccines, because the teachings of vaccines means that we need to care for each other and love your neighbor. And for some religious exemptions, is often a legal loopholes that, and this is not theology, and the government have the right and responsibility, because in the end, this is a question about life and death. And government also have already a law that protects public health, in which using seat belt and banning drunk driving, and vaccine should be one of this also.
Okay, thank you for the good defense. Okay, good job, good job. Okay, let's go to the next question. Yeah. Under your research, actually you have this. Yeah, bear with me. Almost there, Kevin. Okay. Okay. I see that in your historical, in your research, I think in your exordium, yeah, that there are some hesitation regarding the use of the vaccination, because there are first, failure, and secondly, there are percentage of vulnerability on getting the same diseases after you get the vaccine. My question is quite simple. According to that, even what you wrote, why we still need to use the vaccine then? If in the end of the day, some of us will get the same disease.
Okay, thank you for the question, Mr. Yo. Yes, I agree with you that this is a concern that many parents argue about, and I feel like, yes, vaccination, once you get the vaccines, you can get the disease again, but then the the risk of the disease itself is much not dangerous than the risk of the outbreak itself. For example, let's put measles vaccine. The side effect of measles vaccine is that you will get mild fever, sore arms, swelling of glands, and body aches. But then the risk of getting measles itself, as I said, you can die from complication like pneumonia, permanent disability or paralysis. And I think because of this, vaccines reduce the risk of the disease itself. So the function of the vaccine is for you not to get hospitalized.
All right, thank you. Okay, that was my last question. I'll give the time to you, sir.
All right, let's go to Miss Yasmin.
All right. Thank you, Kevin Joe, for the presentation. You did your research well, and then your presentation is quite well too. And the same thing with Mr. Rio. I don't have any background, related background to medicine whatsoever. So I just read your research and then do my own research. So I cannot agree more with what you said, that the Indonesian government has a really huge role to make sure that Indonesian children are healthy, because we are actually a little bit outdated. Because of your paper, I just knew that Indonesia is in the 10 country in which that more than half of the kids actually have 0 doses,
Yep.
especially on measles. So, but what I want to know is because in your paper, even though it's really there are a lot of data there, and then it's totally support that Indonesian government has to make a move, but there is no clear action plan on what things that the government should do in order to make sure that all the children in Indonesia will have their vaccination, because Indonesia is so big. What do you think that the government should do, a clear action plan that the government can do in order to make sure that these kids are going to have their vaccination, in order to make sure that they are going to be healthy later on?
Thank you for the
Thanks.
question, Ms. Yasmin.
Yeah.
So Indonesia has already a law. It's the 2017 regulation of the Ministry of Health, in which vaccines are already made free and mandatory. But clearly, this law is not really a factor right now, because we can see that many children are unvaccinated. And so to fix this, the government should not abandon the law, but then to enforce and strengthen the law, because you don't fix the car by pressing the same button again and again. You fix the car by fixing the engine, the inside, the wires, then you press the button. So then, how should the government actually tackle these obstacles? So first, the government should work with the corporation, not against them. And so then the government can work with local leaders, teachers, public figure, because people tend to trust familiar voices more. And with this, we can increase the vaccination rate higher. And in Indonesia, we know that we have many lands, we have a huge gap in cities and for cities and rural areas. And then the government can create puskesmas, can create more puskesmas, can create mobile clinics, so that it can reach to the harder area better. And for example, university student, they can ask to go to some rural areas like Sumedang, which my sister already does, and to teach the education about vaccine, what is the benefit, what is the side effects. So then with this, we can gain trust from the people with that, and by that, we can reach the goal of getting a high vaccination rate.
All right. Thank you, Kevin, for the answer. And then it's nice of you to say that definitely the government should improve their infrastructure, because yeah, the difference between what happened in the cities and what happened in rural areas, the gap is so big, because you also said that create puskesmas, and then well, mobile, yeah, and then also doctor without borders maybe, yeah, because we are so lacking in that. So do you think that do you think that the cost of improving this infrastructure is going to be a worthwhile investment compared to the money that the government should spend for the reactive, well, actions, if let's say there should be outbreak, though, for example, because if I'm not mistaken, around 1 or 2 years ago there measles outbreak in Papua, but yeah, in maybe the cost is just smaller if let's say you react to the outbreak compared to creating the infrastructure. What do you think about it?
So thank you for the question, Ms. Yasmin. And I think uh, I disagree with you in by focusing uh, your funding to the outbreaks that happen later, because as the data shown that vaccination programs in 94 low and middle income countries, which Indonesia is included, over 10 years will save around 828 billion US dollar, and in treatment cost and lost productivity, with benefits 20 times greater than the cost of running the program. So I think by rebuilding and enforcing and strengthening the infrastructure, it's like a long-term investment, and I think it's the best thing that the government can do.
All right. Thank you, Kevin Jo. Yeah, you're correct, though. No matter what, the preventive action is more important than, well, reactive. Okay. Last one, though. Last one. As Mr. Rio already said before, there is the rise of anti-vaccination groups, and then it's totally the opposite of what happened. Well, back then there is the program Indonesia Bebas Polio, and then the government really did a great job, for me, according to me, then, because they keep promoting that, and then they are showing a commercial of Happy Family with the polio vaccine, and then they did create a supply chain, because it's not easy to maintain the vaccine, right? You need to store it like around minus 2 to 8 degrees, right? And then they made it even to the farthest part of Papua, and then I think back then Indonesia is kind of like free of polio. But the program had to be held like around 1 year before actually everyone from Aceh to Maroke get the vaccine. Now, with the rise of anti-vaccination group, and then there is a problem of infrastructure, and then also the problem with the religious point of view. Okay, is the vaccine clean? And then what do you think that the government should do in order to socialize this vaccine program to the parents? Because back then, with the Indonesia Bebas Polio program in the 1990s, there is no anti-vaccination group. But now, these intellects, because they are kind of like well educated, they are asking where the vaccine come from, and then what's inside the vaccine. So there is the don't know anything about vaccine, and then know too much about vaccine. How the government is going to socialize it to the parents if, let's say, they are this movement? Thank you.
Okay, thank you for the question, Ms. Yasmin. Yes, I agree with you that by as time goes on, people are getting smarter, and misinformation spread faster than facts. And by this, the government, then, I said before, we need to work with local leaders, local government, and by that, the local government have the responsibility, then have the legal accountability to protect the citizens in that area. And so mandate is important, but then we need to have equal access for everyone, added with education as well. We can, as for example, teachers to educate their students about vaccines. We can educate the students here to to fix misinformation that was out there, and I think that's it.
Okay, a couple more questions about the anti-vaxxer groups. There's, at least in America, there's been a lot of discussion about where people are pointing to this study, this one guy some years back who claims there's a link between autism and vaccinations, right? And so they're saying that's why autism is on the rise, is because we've started vaccinating. It started when we started vaccinating our children, and it's on the rise even now. What would you say to somebody who says, you are putting my child at risk of autism because I know there's this link between autism and vaccinations? What would you say to that person?
Thank you for the question, Mr. Wade. Yes, some of the parents are concerned about the MMR vaccine causing autism, and I disagree. I disagree with that because I've done my research, and the guy, the man whose name is Andrew Wakefield in the 1900s, he's a U.S. doctor, and he was asked to make a study about the MMR vaccine having a link causing autism, which was asked by a group of people that if he made the study public and successfully, then he will receive money from them. So then Andrew Wakefield succeeded to make the study public, and he observed not thousands, not hundreds, he observed only six children around the world, and he hypothesized that the MMR vaccine can cause symptoms of autism. And by this, until today, parents are still concerning about the link of autism and MMR vaccine, but we can be sure that this MMR vaccine doesn't cause autism, because after that, after many years, a study, people try to find out if the MMR vaccine really affect autism, and there are 12 studies, around 12 studies, and each observe around millions of children, and all the 12 studies showed no link between autism and the MMR vaccine. And to add why MMR vaccine, why people hypothesize that the MMR vaccine can cause autism, because the MMR vaccine was given to infants who was 12 months, and that is the time when autism symptoms is also is seen at that time. And I think it's easy to scare people, but it's hard to unscare them.
Okay, good answer. Let me ask you one more question. Like in America, I think that there are mandatory vaccines, right? So if you go to a university, often they want to make sure you have a meningitis vaccination. However, even though it's mandatory, they have an ability to get an exception for religious purposes, an exception for, I don't know, some other purposes as well. If we said that it's mandatory, however, we will allow for less than 5% exceptions or something like that, wouldn't that still work? Because you've got 95% of the children vaccinated. You're talking about very difficult for one child in the middle of 95% to get a disease that nobody's able to get and transmit. So would you be in favor of that kind of a system that would allow for exceptions?
Thank you for the question, Mr. Wade. Sorry, sir. So yes, I think in somewhat I agree with your statement, but I feel that if the 5% said that, I think that's fine to not be vaccinated because the 95% is already been vaccinated and I will be safe. But then this 5% can actually get the disease itself, and through this 5%, the disease can mutate and spread further, and which can cause the vaccinated people to be like in danger, because then it will create a more dangerous disease.
All right, good job. Time is up. And with that, we are finished with thesis presentations today. We'll start again tomorrow at